Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. One of my very favorite things about this show is being able to shine a light on people who are doing incredible, unique things, either clinically or non-clinically. I want to introduce you to my friend, Courtney Titus. Courtney is a pediatric emergency medicine PA turned director of Pediatric Clinical Pathways. She's going to tell us about how she made that switch, how she makes these decisions in her life, and how she built this department and this project, which was a dream for so long to help impact the care of pediatric patients across her entire network. Without further ado, here she is, Courtney Titus. Courtney, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you.
So tell us about you and this incredible job that you have created for yourself.
Ooh, where do we start? So I guess the little bit about me is, and I love your podcast because you're always like, I'm a mom. I like to travel. I do a lot of things personally. So I always like to lead with that. But as a PA, my background was that I was a paramedic before I went to PA school. And then, so emergency medicine was kind of the thing I was really interested in. And kind of the journey through PA school was I tried to get, I was very interested in all the spaces, but landed in a general emergency department as my first job out of PA school and learned a ton, which was really exciting. And then when it was kind of time to change schedules, I ended up in a pediatric ER. And that taught me the difference between academic medicine and non-academic medicine. And to kind of jump right in, what ended up happening was I was really confident in my ability to take care of kids because I had been doing that for about 4 years. And I found that when I got to academics, I was like, oh, they do things way differently than I have been doing it. And I had learned some kind of bad habits. And so I kept asking everyone like, hey, like, what is it that why are you doing Dex, for example, group? They're like, why are you using Dex instead of preload? And the answer was, oh, we have these guidelines. And I was like, oh, okay, where are they? And they're like, they point to the back corner of the ER like team center that has like this janky, like Rolodex looking thing that's like dusty and questionable. And I saw them and they didn't have the evidence on them, and they didn't really have the information that I thought they could. And so I eventually, as I was working in the ER as a PA, I kind of started building those into something more. I worked with a huge team of people to kind of turn them into something that was digital, and then kind of moved up. And so now my current role is that I am a director of our Pediatric Clinical Pathways program. And so I am mostly a non-clinical PA.
And when you're talking about clinical pathways, it's like, if this, then that, right? A kid comes in with a certain thing, a diagnosis, this is how we treat them. Like there's a sepsis protocol, there's a respiratory protocol. Like tell me what exactly that means in terms of what you're creating.
Okay, this is my favorite question because a lot of people think they're protocols. They're not protocols. So clinical, the way I try to explain it is that national guidelines come out, right? You have lots of national guidelines on how to care for patients with specific disease processes. So I like to pick on Kawasaki disease because it's kind of easy, right? Kawasaki disease is a virus that affects kids. It has lots of bad complications, and there's very specific workup you want to do. So American Heart Association puts out a guideline and says, this is how you should care for those kids. We take clinical pathways are algorithms that take the national recommendations that move them into local care. So we take expert consensus. That's our local team and how they want to use those guidelines that exist for our patient populations. We may involve antibiotic stewardship to kind of decide how we care for them. And so what they end up looking like is, like these boxes that kind of point to, okay, this patient presents with this is how you're going to work them up. And it's really how we care for patients rather than this is a protocol, because protocols tend to be more linear, something that's like always do this thing for every patient that's like this. These are more care recommendations and how we want to practice based on how a patient presents. They're also not policies too. And I think a lot of people get that confused, that these are specific to providers and they're supposed to be flexible and allow for kind of interpretation of what the guidelines say in the local context of what department you're in, right? Because when you're in the ER versus in the ICU, you're going to have different workflows and different resources. So,
and is this something that was always of interest to you? There's so many people who are out there working who have seen some janky old system that isn't great and have just kept walking, right? They've just kept on keeping on. They haven't said, hey, I'm going to make this, build this program. I'm going to make this better. Were you always into like nerdy pathway data, clinical analytics, or is that something that grew over time?
No, that's a good question. I was actually seeking a change at the time that it was like, I don't know if it was serendipity or not, but it was one of those, I had moved into now pediatric emergency medicine and needed to use these things. So like part of it was very selfish and like, these are terrible. I need them to be better. So it was very like self-serving. And I knew I wanted to do more and go into a non-clinical space, but there were no opportunities, right? Nothing is carved for PAs, I feel like. And so I was kind of looking around. I had actually done some projects with my manager beforehand. We put an orientation packet together. I jumped on a blood cultures committee and was trying to like fix our blood cultures process. And so I found that I liked process improvement. And I've always been an evidence-based practitioner, even when I was in a general ER and we weren't an academic center at the time. I was still like pulling the literature and saying, this is why we treat with this antibiotic for this many days, for example. And so evidence-based practice has been the foundation of my practice. I feel like most PAs, right? That's what we're taught. But it's been a love and like a passion. And so I saw a vision for this that I don't think everyone else saw. And I knew that, and I knew how big it could get. And so I knew that I had never managed people before. I had never really built teams. I had never been in a healthcare business meeting. I had no idea. I lived in the ER bubble, right? I didn't go outside of my bubble. I didn't know anyone in the hospital. And so there was this huge like language barrier. They were using terms. I did patient-centered care, always sounded like a buzzword, but I didn't really know what it meant. It had a very specific meaning for teams. There was like leadership skills. I knew I was sorely lacking. So it wasn't that it was just the pathways part. I knew my brain works that way. Like I think this way. And so it's very natural, easy fit for me. I can take a garbled mess and turn it into something that's kind of pretty and nerdy. And then the data piece came later when I started asking questions about like, okay, we did all this work. Did it make a difference? And then you have to learn how to read a run chart, decide if that's even telling you what the question you're answering, if it's answering the question you're asking. So yeah, it's some of that came over time, but yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people listening who can really deeply resonate with that. I see something, I can imagine a position, the department doesn't exist, or it does and there's no PAs. I don't have the leadership management business. They speak a whole different language. How do I write these emails? How do I get in the room and like speak in this meeting? Did that come eventually? Like that's something you do every day now. How did you get to the point where you felt comfortable doing those things?
There are still days that I don't feel comfortable doing those things that I'm like, oh, they let me do this now. And like, I get to make decisions. I would say in the beginning, I was like, I really was very cautious about how I communicated with people because I didn't want to step on toes and I was not in a position of authority and there was nothing built. And so I'm of the mindset, I will build it and then make it perfect later. So I was like, let me just show them what I know can happen. And so I didn't know what I was doing. And I started the Empowered PAs, like it was at first a blog specifically because I was like, I needed to talk to PAs that are in leadership positions because I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I started reaching out in like Facebook groups and wherever at the time. I don't know that we had a lot of Instagram, but it was interesting because I found they were so willing to talk to me. And shout out to all the people that had contributed to that blog. Sometimes it was an email questionnaire, but I was like, I had so many questions about just getting in there, and I didn't know who to go to. And I found that PAs understood why I didn't know. Where I feel like physicians have something kind of built where they tend to have roles carved out like that for them, and even nurse practitioners, but I just felt really lost. So I did that, and that helped. I went to an executive leadership conference. I networked and met more PAs in leadership positions, and they kind of, I don't know, they kind of took me under their wing and were really helpful that way. And I'm really grateful for those people that were there. I also found a mentor locally. So within like a champion, if you will, that understood. They didn't see my vision until I kind of put a PowerPoint together and made them see the vision. But and you'll see that when I'll say the thing that was key is that I believed that this could be a thing. I knew it in my soul, and I knew I was going to get no's, but I was very intentional about like kind of being annoying about it. I would say like, hey, what do you think? A pathway would be really great for that, don't you think? Or finding I would get little bits of data to kind of prove my value. And that was kind of the turning point. And I found that I learned the language of the people I was talking to and learned what their pain points were. And I used pathways to solve that. And that brought in more support and more mentors. And so I had what started with one mentor that broadened into mentors at various levels of leadership. That was really key because that was eventually how I got the position.
Yeah. A lot of what you're saying is things that I will talk to my negotiation clients about in terms of this. I call that pleasant persistence, where you're just like the squeaky wheel. Like you just keep bringing up the fact that this could be great. And what if we had a program for that? And, wouldn't it be wonderful if, and, I would be happy to spearhead this, where and you don't do it in a way that's like annoying, but rather like, that shows that you're passionate and that this wasn't just like a fleeting, like, oh, we could do this, but I'm not serious about it, right? That you kind of keep reminding. And then also that you speak their language, which is something that business piece of healthcare, we simply don't learn it in school. We don't know what it means to self-fund our position or to do some of these metrics and data and these things that prove our worth, because clinicians know they're adding value, right? They know they're adding value in that one-on-one interaction with patients. They know they're adding value sort of on the whole in terms of how busy they feel and how many patients they see. But that is not the same language that the administrators speak and understand. You've got to get so that they see you relative to what they need, not relative to what you need. It's not about asking for what you need. It's about positioning yourself to solve the problems they're already having.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I did not understand that in the beginning. It wasn't a tough lesson to learn. I think that what started to kind of shift the wins, if you will, in the sales, I think it was once I started learning that it's not like I was doing this partially also because I needed a better schedule. I didn't want to work 17 ER shifts a month. It was just killing me. And so I was like, I had a vision but I can't go to my boss and be like, I don't like this. I want to do something else. Right. And so it was like, how can I serve our patients, our hospital, myself, my team, and grow it. And I was very, very grateful that my leadership team locally and within the hospital is very supportive and being creative in how to make that happen. And like when I asked for admin time, for example. But yeah, if you don't understand that you're there, they need to have a return on that investment. Ultimately. And that's really where, if you can't show what that return is going to be, then you're going to really struggle to get what you're looking for. It really has to be, if you let me do this, this is what I'm going to show you. And our kind of motto in that department specifically was like, show it, prove it, and then they kind of give you some leeway. So, which is okay sometimes, but it meant a lot of extra work outside of work. if you will.
Yeah. And we hear that a lot from people who end up in executive leadership, in these director positions, and creating these departments that didn't exist before, is a lot of what you're saying. Like, what's behind door number 1? What's behind door number 2? What's behind door number 3? Where do I fit? What do I enjoy? And also that we have to be willing to give a piece of ourselves to the process, knowing it might not work out, right? Knowing that, like, I'm going to create this thing and I'm going to do it with my own time and energy in the hopes that this will build and become something. So talk to me about the timeline of, like, I'm a full-time emergency room, PA treating kids, to now I'm totally non-clinical. How long does that take? What did that transition look like?
Yeah, it's funny you say, you have to expect that, you may get told no, because there was a time where I was like, well, this isn't going to work out. And I needed to set a boundary for myself of, like, what am I willing to, like, throw in, like, where's my line of I'm done? I started in 2016. I started working clinically in 2016 in that department. And then the end of that year is my first kickoff meeting. I have it timed, like, because I had to tell the history of the program. And that was the very first, like, very small kickoff meeting. And it took about 2 to 3 years before it got traction. But in that 2 to 3 year time, we approved like probably 30. I think the initial batch was like 21, and then we got like 30, maybe more through, maybe not quite so much. But so I would say it took about 2 to 3 years to just get some real momentum where people knew they existed on the intranet at that time. And then we moved them publicly. And that was kind of a more like almost like an awareness campaign. And people were starting to, outside of our hospital, were starting to recognize they existed. And so that timeline just kept continuing. And so at some point, I would say it was probably 4 years in that I asked for some, like, an official non-clinical position. In that 4 years, though, I had, like, petitioned my medical director and my team and said, like, can I get a little admin time? And they initially said no. And then my boss was very creative and gave me little pockets of time, but it was very inconsistent and it was not in the budget. We don't have the room. We think this is amazing. We love your vision, but it's just not there. And then an opportunity came up, and because I had planted so many seeds in the minds of people outside of my bubble, they remembered me. And when an opportunity came up and they knew that this was a solution to their pain point, they came to me and said, hey, we have this opportunity. Would you like to go half and half? And I did. I had an interview. It wasn't quite that easy, but I went half and half. And that was, I think, 4 or 5 years in. And then I did half and half for maybe 2 more years. And we kept ramping up the work. And I could kind of justify and say, like, I need more time. And so I went to 0.7. And then at 0.7 FTE, like, so 70% of my time was in doing non-clinical work. And then eventually, a couple of years, like 2 years ago, I went full-time non-clinical, and we switched the role to a director position at that point, because after working with other teams, I realized I was doing director level work and building a program. So it was, I would say probably 7 to 8 years from full-time clinical, and then kind of getting a little bit of admin time. It was gradual. It definitely wasn't quick.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that transparency, because I think there's so many listeners who think I step away from the bedside and into this ready-made, leadership position of a director or, a medical director. And it's rarely that direct. It's often twisting, turning, up the stairs, down the stairs, up the stairs again, creating this thing. There is something about being a PA that number one, we don't see ourselves reflected in these roles. We see lots of nurses and executive leadership, lots of physicians. It's sort of a foregone conclusion. And I think we're having this awakening as a profession where we're starting to see others and say, I could do that, right? I could do that. So one of the things that's really a hot topic right now is doctoral degrees, and getting a doctoral degree in terms of preparing yourself for some of this healthcare administration, leadership, some of these positions. Do you have one? Have you considered pursuing one? And what are your thoughts on that?
I do not have one. I have a lot of thoughts on that. I will say I've been a fan of the doctoral degree for a while, because if you look at other healthcare professionals, allied health professionals, it's the wave of the future, right? It's almost necessity. And I think that anytime you're putting yourself into a position where you're going to learn, because you're going to learn in a doctoral program, no matter which one it is, I'm in full support of that. I think it makes us all better PAs. So I've been a fan. I know there's a lot of rhetoric around it sometimes. And, people will ask, like, do you have to, and I'm a big fan of PAs moving into non-clinical roles, as you well know. You don't have to have a doctoral degree to work in a non-clinical role. I think we both know that. But it does support it. And I love when PAs tell me they've gotten their doctoral degrees. I think it's a fantastic return on investment. That said, I feel that there are some misunderstandings when it comes to, like, when you choose which doctoral degree you're looking at, you really need to be thoughtful about what are you trying to get out of this degree, right? If it's just a title, then I don't know that that's maybe it is worth it, but it's not worth it to me. So I had looked at the kind of classic DMSc. I had also looked at a couple PhD programs, and I really had to ask myself, what do I want out of this degree and why am I doing this? Because I'm not going to pay the money, nor do I want to go back to school necessarily. But I found that what I really want, and I have a much clearer vision than I did when I first was thinking about this, is that I really love implementation science. And that is it's the science of taking evidence-based practice and moving it into frontline care. And that's essentially what I built, right? It's like we're trying to narrow the gap. I think the average is 17 years from a published paper to actual real practice. And that's way too long. So, and that was studied well before there were the numerous amounts of evidence that came out on a regular basis. So I feel like that number is probably even worse at this point. So I am pursuing, and actually on the 1st, I can apply to a doctoral program, a DRPH program in implementation science. So hopefully they'll accept me, but that's my kind of next step, because I wanted research, I do quality improvement research. I had to learn all that. I had no idea what I was doing in the beginning. And so I took some classes and got certified in Lean Six Sigma, and that was really helpful. But it still fell short when it came to clinical research or qualitative or mixed qualitative and quantitative research. And so I know there's a gap there that I need filled in a more kind of consistent way. So that's what I've been pursuing. And it's been interesting because I had to put together a statement of purpose, and the platform is exactly like CASPA. It's the same model of CASPA. It was very traumatizing. So I had to I feel like a PA student again. So yeah, that's my thought. I think all of them are great. I think if you know what you want to go into, fantastic. I think if you don't, start talking to PAs that have doctoral degrees and just see what they felt like they learned out of it. I've never met one that regretted it. I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that said, I wish I had not done that.
Are you feeling stuck, burned out, or craving a little more flexibility and financial freedom? You're not alone. So many clinicians feel trapped in the grind, overworked, underpaid, and unsure how to pivot. But here's the truth. Your skills are valuable beyond the clinic. That's why I created the 48 Side Gig Ideas for Healthcare Providers guide, a free PDF packed with practical, creative, and immediately cash-generating ideas that you can start right now. From telehealth to medical writing and patient advocacy to app development, and even a little note on podcasting, these things aren't fluff. These are real, proven opportunities that other providers are already doing. You don't have to figure it out alone. This guide will help you explore new passions, learn how to make extra money, and make the first step towards multiple income streams and building the life and career you actually want. Download your free copy today at tracybingaman.com/gig or click the link in the show notes and start creating financial freedom and cash flow flexibility on your own terms. Because you, my friend, are more than just your clinical job, and taking the first step to generating alternative revenue streams is waiting for you inside the Side Gig Guide. Find it now in the show notes. So I would like to know, I think everyone listening knows what it's like to be a clinician, that you come in, you see patients, you do your notes, you go home, whether that's in the office, inpatient, in the emergency room or the operating room, wherever it is that you work. What is a day in the life of a non-clinical person? Are you on meetings all day? What is it that you do when you are sort of like logged on and working?
So I always thought, because I live in the quality improvement world, I always thought like quality improvement, non-clinical work was the most dull, had to be the most dull thing on the planet. Like, because I work in the ER, right? Going from the ER to sitting at a desk sounded really boring. But my days are very different, which keeps me kind of going. So like some days I do a lot of hybrid work where I work from home, I work remotely. So I do have a lot of virtual meetings some days. I book out like planning sessions for myself so that I can actually work on building algorithms and like getting documents kind of ready for the approval process. But I also do like we've done in person. I'll go to the hospital and we'll do a hybrid whiteboard session. They're usually like 2 hours where I'll work with our local team as well as offsite teams that are virtual and like Zoom in so that we can actually build an algorithm together. So we pull the evidence that exists and we start saying like, okay, how do we want to care for patients at our facility? And does that match what the other facilities want? And then we have to start kind of working through those details. And there may be a question of like, is an echo appropriate at this time? Well, what's the data say? And so you kind of pull that out. So it's a fair amount of that because we have quite a few of them. Those are my favorite days, by the way, because I get to be creative and kind of do fun things and work with teams that are really engaged. And that's like really fulfilling because you're not just what we're building is not just going to be for one patient. You know that this is going to spread evidence-based practice and make it easier for teams. So sometimes we're in the development phase of an algorithm. And so a team is like stuck because they don't agree with another team. And so we have to come together on that. Some days they've gone through the development phase and now they're in approval. And so we have to make sure that our approval teams have gone through them. So I chair those meetings. And then I have to get ready for those meetings because they're multidisciplinary. Pharmacists review them. We have an equity review. There's a lot that goes into that. And then maybe it could be into the implementation side. So making sure that we roll these things out in a way that people actually know they exist. And then making sure that all the relevant stakeholders, so if it's like a bronchiolitis pathway that we're rolling out, we need to make sure that the respiratory therapy team knows it exists because it impacts them. And then nursing, and some of these are they're created for providers, but they have nursing workflows in them. And so you want to make them aware that like, hey, by the way, when a sepsis patient comes in, this is going to kind of be everyone's process. So we're all on the same team. So the implementation side takes a lot longer. The meetings can be, I meet with the charge nurse and we figure out a way to roll this out for them so that they know. And then we have a review cycle. So some days I have to go in and say like, oh, this pathway's been up for 5 years and it's due for review. They need to do a literature search. So I'll contact those teams. And it's all of those are kind of our 4 big buckets of work. And so you can imagine we have 104 now of them. So every one of those has gone through that kind of a cycle and there's a lot. I mean, they take 6 months and then these are often in like a PDF format. And we have another technological software that integrates within our computer EMR, and that software integrates with our order sets. And so there's a lot of build that has to happen. And so I'm not technical, but I have to work with the tech teams to kind of make it happen. So it's a lot of different meetings and conversations. And I've gone into the ER to do some QI work to kind of see what their actual process is when you have a sepsis patient that comes in, who triages them, what's the next step, who takes responsibility for their sepsis huddle, things like that. So it's really broad. There's a lot of different things I do.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting. And it also seems like rewarding in a different way. Like when you're taking care of that patient and they feel better and the parents say thank you, that's one way to feel rewarded by the work that you're doing. But it sounds like you are making this wide and deep impact in terms of those patients getting the appropriate care as consistently as possible in many different settings by many different clinicians. And that also sounds like it's rewarding in a different way.
Yeah, it's great. This is my child. And I love it to like a child. Like there are days that are tough in the sense of like the emotional cycle of change where you go from informed uninformed optimism into informed pessimism, into I don't know if you've ever seen that, the valley of despair, and you really try to shorten the valley of despair into informed optimism. And so there was a period where I was like, what did I get myself into? And then, but now after this many years, we really are seeing the benefits of it and how we've been able to do the work locally and spread it across our entire institution, which is amazing. And so it's very fulfilling once you see the light at the end of the tunnel and you're starting to see that you're really making an impact. And now I do work with the national group as well, and I help that team kind of spread the work, because I'm not the only team member that does it in the nation, right? So that the collaboration has been really fun, and learning from other clinical pathways teams has been amazing. So yeah, it's super fun.
So it does sound like the grass is greener, but I would love, as someone who has done both the clinical and the non-clinical, to walk us through some of the pros and cons. Do you have good boundaries? Do you have work-life balance? Do you find you're always checking your email or, doing some of these things because you can work remotely? So is it better? What's better? What's, harder?
I would say it's different. And it really has to do with like what brings you joy. I think, Tracy, you and I have had these conversations about, and I think COVID taught a lot of us in healthcare just about mental health and prioritizing really what matters and being very clear about what is most important to you. I would say like the pros are that I have a son that has a medical condition. He has juvenile arthritis, and he was diagnosed during COVID, and he's on multiple shots, injections he gets, and he has multiple doctor's appointments all the time. And when all this happened, I was like, thank goodness I'm transitioning into a role where I have some schedule flexibility, because I can just say as a mom, that really stressed me out, because I can't make those meetings necessarily if I'm working nights and weekends and, having weird schedules in the ER. So that is a huge pro just in general for me, because it makes it, and I can attend my kids' sporting events, and I can go to, muffins with mom on Mother's Day. Like that stuff matters. And it's like, that is a priority in my life. And I love this. This is my baby, but it is not the only part of my life. And so I would say that's a huge pro for me, because I carved it out that way, right? Like I chose very intentionally. The cons are that it can be very frustrating when, you're in a system that feels very broken sometimes, in the sense that not everyone is talking to each other. The pro of that, though, is that I've learned that a lot of the people I work with are incredible, and you really get a sense of community and like a group effort in trying to improve care. And like you see that there's real, like the people you work with are so dedicated to taking care of children. And it's a weird, like frustrating, but then also amazing kind of experience. So I would say that the grass is greener if you make good choices. But then at the same time, I still work clinically in the Peds ER once a month or so to like keep my toes in a little bit. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. So I didn't want to let go of those skills. I also kind of, from a quality improvement standpoint, really wanted to know, like, I don't want to be the Wizard of Oz, right, behind a curtain, and you have no idea what's happening in the real life and the frustrations of your day-to-day people that are like using these order sets or using these algorithms. So I would say the other pro is that it allows me to be creative in a way that helps patients. Like, I don't feel like there's a lot of opportunities in medicine for that, right? Like, I feel like there's a lot of like, just put your head down and do the work. And that's very fulfilling for me. And I will say, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, that other people see what I've done and they kind of get inspired to like, oh, what could I do? And it like that kind of domino effect is really nice. It's like, oh, like all that laborious like emails and no's, all the no's I got are now starting to like really pay off. Now there's an opportunity kind of built into our ER where if anybody wants to work on an admin project, there's space for them. And they made that space for them kind of as a, like, I was the pilot, thank God it worked out. But so yeah. And I think that, so for me, it's more pros than cons in this phase of my career. I'm always also one of those people that's like, you don't have to just commit and be there for the rest of your life. If something were to change, I know where my boundaries are. I know what's not going to work for me, and I have to be okay letting that go. And that's after a lot of hard work, making sure I understand those boundaries.
Yeah. And building boundaries and separating who we are from what we do is a huge challenge for clinicians because we feel called to this. We feel called to this work. We feel like we are uniquely positioned and qualified to take care of patients and to be the best person for them. So I do think that's a struggle for many people to sort of separate, hey, this is what I do. It is not who I am. It is a part of me. It is not the single defining feature of my life. And when we can sort of work through that detangling, then we can more effectively set boundaries and be more intentional about this is the space that this is going to take up in my life. This is the container and the boundaries and, being intentional about that. It's such an important reminder that we all need to sort of reevaluate how much time and energy we're spending on some of these things.
Yeah, I still have to learn the email issue. Like that is still when you kind of move into from a clinical, nose to the grindstone kind of work to I am responsible for all of this and I have these responsibilities. You can't just like close the laptop and just assume nothing is happening. Like there is some level of like genuine, like, oh, I got to make sure everything's okay. That said, I have also learned to set boundaries in that space. So, like, I know when I travel with my family, I tell everyone months ahead of time. I set up the plan. I'm like, I am not checking my email at all. But occasionally, I still do it on a weekend just to be like, everything's good. Okay, we're good. That I can do that email on a Monday. So that's a work in progress for me. But it is important, and I think the martyrdom of medicine teaches us that, and we just are it's so ingrained into our practice that you really have to be very specific about what you're looking for and what you will not do when you move into a non-clinical role, and be upfront with your team about that too.
Yeah. And, I think when we put those boundaries in, we have to both communicate them, right? Tell people we're going to be unavailable, put the out of office on, like let them know we're not checking. And also like if there is an escalation, if you do need me, like don't send me an email if something is on fire, right? Like you've got to call me. It has to be like an up leveled degree of communication because I'm not going to be checking my email every 10 minutes all weekend, right? So if something catches fire and I need to put the fire out, call me. And then, when we communicate that to people, then we can not check the email with peace, right? Like knowing, it must be okay because they haven't called. And everyone is responsible for following these guidelines, right? Everyone is responsible for communicating with me in the way that I have set out. And then if they didn't call, they didn't call, right? I'm okay. Things are fine.
The other thing I will say is I am very fortunate to have almost always worked in a team that has that culture kind of built in. It's like baked into, especially patient safety and quality. There was like an aha moment when I moved from just like clinical medicine into like this department that no one knows exists in the hospital and kind of feels like the forgotten group that everyone just kind of knows that like when I'm on PTO, like I don't reach out to that boss. I know there's a transition plan and we know who to reach out to. And like everyone's really respectful of that. And I think that culture makes a big difference.
Yeah. I am often heard telling people that boundaries are contagious. So if you have good ones, it often is unpopular at first, especially if you're in a culture where they don't have good boundaries and suddenly you set one and enforce it. Everyone's like, well, who? Like Courtney thinks she can just like tell us she's not available when she's off. And then you do it and people are like, oh, Courtney can do it. If Courtney can do it, maybe I can do it, right? Like maybe I can also be off when I'm off. And that is super powerful when we see and lead by example, like, hey, I don't want to be on all the time. Here's what I'm going to do to build this, communicating it. Like you can't just tomorrow say like, never again am I going to ever check email, but you can say, here's how I'm going to do this, and kind of test that out and trial it and see how it goes for you and your team.
Yeah, and you're a happier employee when you do that, right? I'm a better employee when I set boundaries. So it's good for everyone.
Are you confident you know where your next dollar should go? 403B, 457, HSA, or Roth? There are so many options. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming. A lot of providers aren't sure if their investment mix is optimized, if they're contributing enough to their investment accounts, or if they're paying too much in taxes. Meet Caleb Pepperday, a fee-only financial planner and founder of Advanced Practice Planning, LLC. Caleb helps PAs create a clear plan of action that allows them to fast track their path to work optional living, all while keeping more of what they earn today. Caleb's process identifies the strategies that make the most sense for each PA situation and provides step-by-step guidance to put them into action. For our listeners, Caleb is offering a free one-on-one consultation where he will provide feedback on the steps you've taken in your own financial situation and if you're on track to achieve your goals. Caleb will also help you to determine if your situation warrants needing to work with a financial planner or if you're on track doing it by yourself. Head to advancedpracticeplanning.com/FI to grab your free consultation time slot. These consultations are capped each week to keep turnaround fast. That's advancedpracticeplanning.com/FI.
Advanced Practice Planning LLC is a registered investment advisor in Montana and Pennsylvania. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Advanced Practice Planning LLC and its representatives are properly registered or exempt from registration. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. This advertisement is for informational purposes only and does not constitute individualized advice or a guarantee that you will achieve a desired result. All topics discussed in this podcast are the opinion of the podcast host and not of Advanced Practice Planning LLC or its advisors.
Yeah, it's hard to turn your brain off and rest when you're sort of constantly, oh, I'm just sitting here in the pickup line. Maybe I'll just check my email. And then your brain is on again, right? You're not really off if you're thinking about perseverating about, some of the things that you have to do at work, for sure.
For sure.
So as we wrap up here, I would love for you to speak to the PA who has a dream of a program like this, of changing something, right? Of building something, of saying like, hey, the way we've always done this sucks. And I would like to make this better. Talk to that person and give them some encouragement.
The first thing I would say is really have a good vision for what that dream looks like. And it may be fuzzier at the end, but have a sense of what you really want out of that and share that with people, because that just maybe like boundaries. I think that vision is also contagious, and planting seeds is kind of sometimes the path forward. I also am a big fan of like just failing forward and prototyping things. So like, don't feel like you have to create this whole thing and then jump right into it. Like do small, like the hallmark of a good quality improvement project is small tests of change. And so I live by that, right? Like we don't have to boil the ocean. Let's start with one pathway. Let's start with one algorithm in that pathway and just see and do it. And if I hate it, then I don't do it again. And listening to your intuition is the most important thing. Do I like this? Do I hate it? Does it bring me joy? If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. It's like, for me, it's one of those, like, it has to be a slam dunk. I really enjoy this. This is super fun. I want to do it again. And that was I would say that's the key of like doing something that seems like it's something that's interesting to you. If you're a PA and you are thinking about moving into an educator role, well, why don't you go teach, a couple lectures at a local school and see if you like it and see what they're ask them questions, like buy somebody coffee and get to know what it is they do on a day-to-day basis. Listen to Tracy's podcast. She's got a lot of them, like dig into the thing you're really interested in, pick a bucket or 3 and just test each one of those. It's like dating, right? You're just trying to like test little things out. You don't have to commit. It doesn't have to be this like lifelong passion that you're building a project. Start small and make it exist if you are interested, and then make it perfect later. Those are my like big kind of mantras. And the failing forward took a while for me, like being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and like sitting in a boardroom where I'm the only PA, there's no other PAs at the table, was terrifying. And not knowing the language, like I felt like a foreigner in another country. And even though I didn't even know the people most of the time, it was really hard. So I would say just being comfortable, embrace the discomfort. It's like going on a stage at a conference, just like you're going to be uncomfortable. Get ready, put your bootstraps on and just do it.
Yeah. And it's a great reminder that it's not all or nothing. It's not that you're a clinician, you hang up your stethoscope and walk into some other, boardroom and never go back, right? That so often these things are paired with and go alongside the work we're doing clinically, which I think gives us a superpower in terms of we get it. So many decision makers, administrators have never been at the bedside. They've never been in the trenches. And that gives you this unique ability to say, well, that absolutely won't work that way, because that's not, you can't have the nurse in charge of that. They're not the one in the room when that's happening, right? So like you have this great ability to say like, here's what it's like in this clinical setting. And then you can learn the rest, right? You can learn the rest of how to talk to people and what they're saying when they say some of those things. And that feeling of needing an interpreter, like that's very normal. A lot of people say that. Like I got in the room and then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
And you're going to feel really stupid. And that is okay. It's okay to feel that way, because if you're in a room and you're the smartest one in the room and you know everything that's going, you're not in the right rooms. You need to be in rooms where you feel kind of uncomfortable and you're like, you have people around you that you can learn from. I think the other part of that too is I sought out more education. Like I went and I got trained. I learned all sorts of things. I became, like I said, Lean Six Sigma certified. I got some research training. Like I got a little bit of everything and found what stuck. And that helped me kind of move through. You get, if it's something you really enjoy or you're like, this in my gut feels right, you tend to like lean, you just kind of follow the path of joy. I think it was I think Martha Beck had said that one time it's like kind of the idea of following your path of joy rather than just, trying to trudge through something and forcing something that doesn't work. If you get into the boardrooms and you've done it for a little bit and you're like, because I have no interest necessarily in leading, being like an APP lead, right. That's another common path for PAs. And I kind of got into some of those rooms and I was like, I don't love this. This is not my path of joy. So I have started to just lean into that. And I think if you listen to yourself, you'll know what's a yes and what's a no.
Do you know what this reminds me of? Clinical rotations. Like you go out on rotation and you're like, I'm here with other people who know what they're doing. I may or may not know what I'm doing, but like, I am learning, but I'm also like testing the room, right? Like, is the OR for me? Is the floor for me? Is the ER for me? Is the outpatient setting for me? Do I like specialty? Do I like primary care? Like, what if you just said, I'm going to spend the next year investigating and like raising my hand to be on committees and finding things out. And like every time checking in with myself, like, how did that feel? Like terrifying, but exciting, or just like terrifying and like, get me out of here. I never want to be in this situation again. Like, those are valuable things to know about you and the situations in which you thrive or don't thrive.
Yeah. And you can like committees. I was just thinking as you were saying that, I was like, committees are like rotations, right? Like there are a million committees. Each committee is its own rotation. And you don't have to join a committee, by the way. You can just say, hey, can I sit on this committee for one meeting? I'm just curious. And, do you have any problems with that? And I promise you, committees are always looking for people to speak to something. And so you don't have to dedicate yourself to anything. You can just do your rotations. Like, can we just do a year of non-clinical rotations? I think that would be excellent.
Just like researching. Yeah, it's a great idea. And one of my favorite things about the show is just being able to shine a light on like, look what everyone is doing and then decide what's of interest to you and then investigate further. Like get that person on the phone, email them, go to their thing, learn how to do this, because there are so many things and so many spaces. And I think in 10 years, I'll be podcasting on episode 3000 at that point. And I'll be saying like, it's amazing what PAs are doing, but I'm like already saying like, it's amazing. Like already all of this cool stuff exists that people are doing. And it's just so cool.
Yeah, I agree. The other piece that I would tell a PA that was interested in moving into a non-clinical space and feels like some people are not accessible is go into LinkedIn or some kind of site. I love LinkedIn. You can reverse engineer it, right? Like if you're like, this PA is doing this thing, go on there, look at their experience, look at their timeline is right there. It's in their bio. It will be right there for you. You can see what certifications they have if they did it right. And most of them have. Like you can kind of retro engineer like, okay, all the PAs in quality and safety have this certification. I should probably do that. It's like there's a lot of, if you just ask the right questions, the internet will provide. and then if you get really interested, then you reach out to those people and say like, hey, can I put a bug in your ear and have a quick 15-minute chat. And sometimes they're going to say no, and that's okay. That's their boundaries. But sometimes they'll say yes.
Yeah. Just like when students message and say, hey, can I shadow? Right? Like it's the same. It's just, we're grown up now.
It's grown up non-clinical rotations. It's the opposite of clinical rotations. Yeah, we should start that. It would be great.
Absolutely. So is LinkedIn the best place for people to find you if they want to follow along, see what you're up to, learn from you in this growing directorship position?
Yeah. Actually, I have my hands in a lot of pots right now. And I feel like that's like the one central place you can probably figure out what Courtney's doing right now. So yeah, I think that's a good spot. And there's so much like in any, any PA that I should probably not share this, but any PA that requests to connect, I will connect with because I'm here for the PAs. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm not investigating anyone. I'm like, if you're a PA, come on in. It's fine. It's fine. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Courtney. This has been such a fun discussion. And I love the marriage of this like very cool pathway that you have also made for yourself in terms of like, does this bring me joy? Because we don't talk about that enough in our careers. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is really fun. I'm glad to kind of get it out there and share it with other PAs because it's fun. You can really kind of take control of your life and do fun things if you are very intentional about it. And I love talking about it. So thank you.
I hope that this episode has inspired you to take a look around you and say, what things are interesting and exciting to me? What can I try out as if I were going out on rotation to learn more about and find out if that's a viable thing for me and my career at this season of my life? Thank you, as always, for tuning in to another episode of The PA is In. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations. You've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.